Hi everyone, it's LadyJenevia. There's a new Spider-Man film out, so if that means that it's time to discuss Sony's superhero content, let's talk about Venom. I loved Venom. I wanted to make a proper review of it when it came out because of how much I enjoyed it, but time got away from me, and now we're doing it all these months later. But on the other hand, it's a little bit better that I can do it now because the film finished its theatrical run, and that means that I am able to review the film in its entirety and show clips to add context to what I'm saying, so perhaps it all worked out. Of course, that means that this review is going to have spoilers, but before I get into all of the content of the film itself, I need to refresh the memory or perhaps inform those that were not already familiar. Leading up to Venom's release, there was this semi-organized effort to try to sabotage it and make it fail. These professional critics, I'm using the word professional ironically here, were so determined to rip it to shreds and criticize anything and everything to do with it. And perhaps more bizarrely, Lady Gaga stans, a lot of them were going around and saying that people needed to boycott it or to not see it or whatever was going on simply because they wanted A Star Is Born to be number one at the box office on opening weekend. A Star Is Born was making its rounds during the award show season, and Venom was one of the top 10 grossing films of the entire year. So it all worked out for everyone, I would like to think anyway. And now we are getting a Venom sequel. We are getting an entire universe from Sony's superhero content because even though they try to say that Spider-Man is in the same universe as Venom, we all know that it's a lot more entangled with that other universe. So however you feel about those respective films, whether you like them both, you don't like them both, you like one and you don't like the other, for now at least, there's not really much to indicate an overlap. Perhaps it'll come, but until that day comes, I am treating them as separate entities. Now let's go ahead and revisit Venom. After Venom's first notable live-action film appearance in Spider-Man 3, there was still tons of room for creatives to bring the character to life again and develop him further. Instead of operating on a simplistic moral binary, the Venom film embraces the opportunity to explore the morally gray. The film's director wanted to embrace the horror elements since Venom is a character that bites people's heads off and eats them. In superhero films, the best hero-villain pairings are the ones that inform the audience more about each other, as well as the larger themes of the story. Eddie Brock's foe is Carlton Drake. Though it might not be obvious at first glance, these two characters do have some similarities with one another. Eddie Brock is a talented investigative journalist, and Carlton Drake is a genius inventor and CEO of the Life Foundation, which does various things in the bioengineering field. They're good-looking, charismatic, and deeply committed to their work to a flaw. Here is where the differences between them become more apparent. Despite having a job that puts him on television and even earns him a few fans, Eddie Brock is more of a regular, everyday person. Losing his job causes him to lose his apartment, his fiancée, and overall leaves him very disillusioned. Carlton Drake, on the other hand, is able to commit a number of crimes and moral transgressions without suffering any consequences due to his wealth and elite privilege. What exactly are Eddie Brock's ethical transgressions? He reads a confidential email sent to his fiancée Anne, who works for a law firm that is representing Carlton Drake. These documents speak about harmful human testing, which Eddie confronts him about in an interview, disregarding the orders from his boss to just play nice and do a fluff piece. Eddie Brock's story exemplifies the fighting spirit you see in activists. There's an expression that's used frequently about how bad people will continue to get away with their crimes as long as good people sit back and do nothing. Eddie Brock is someone who is so intrinsically good that he cannot abide by the societal constructs that protect a few to the detriment of many. That laser focus on Carlton Drake is not without consequences, but it's all part of the larger story. His loss makes him all the more willing to take the risk of breaking into Carlton's facility to uncover the truth when he's approached by Dora, one of Carlton's Life Foundation employees. Another key difference between Eddie and Carlton is established throughout this first chunk of the film.
So you can have them personally delivered to you.
You did that for me?
Yes, I did.
Oh.
Note how Eddie shows an entirely earnest kindness to both Maria, the homeless woman, and Mrs. Chen, the local shopkeeper. Contrast this with the way Carlton Drake speaks about people when he's performing versus being honest.
Mr. Drake?
It's okay, don't silence her. Come here, what's your name? I've always believed that space exploration is crucial in our quest to cure everything that ails us here on Earth.
We're gonna need another host.
Such poor design. Excuse me? Human beings.
Eddie has a genuine empathy for others with no expectation of anything in return. When Carlton speaks about helping people with his research, it's entirely performative. He sees himself as someone who is above the rest of humanity. Some people have complained about the amount of time it takes for Venom to manifest as his own character to interact with Eddie. What they fail to understand is that all of what's shown in this first part of the film is essential to understand what type of person Eddie is. This introduction brings important context to Eddie's actions throughout the entire film. His hunger to get the truth out and his desperation to get his life back on track make him all the more willing to break into a dangerous facility. He's a man who doesn't always think things through before he acts. Combine that with his empathy for others, and it makes perfect sense that he would recklessly try to smash this prison cell open in an effort to free Maria instead of just getting his pictures and getting out to safety. The word symbiote is another key here. It's the name given to the alien creatures that have crash-landed from space and possess various people as they please. However, it's also a reference to a symbiotic relationship, which by definition means one that is mutually beneficial. The symbiotes achieve an optimum state if they can find the right host to inhabit. When the host isn't ideal, the symbiotes are shown to feed on the person's organs or hop around from person to get to where they want to be. Riot is well suited to form a symbiotic relationship with Carlton Drake because he's hungry for power and the means to unleash destruction and havoc. Carlton can provide the resources and technology to follow through with his plan and shares the superiority complex needed for them to refuse to consider all the people they'll be harming in the process. Conversely, Venom's decision to stay on Earth and save it is only possible because of all those things the film's opening taught you about Eddie. Eddie's passion for doing the right thing no matter what, and the empathy and love he has for the people in his life are what changes Venom's mind after spending all that time in his head.
What really made you change your mind?
You did, Eddie.
There's no denying how impressive the action of Venom is. There's so much time and care that's gone into using the uniqueness of Venom's form and abilities when putting these sequences together. The team behind all of this have offered up such a great variety in location and scale, whether Eddie and Venom are fighting off individual foes in close proximity, or smashing up trucks and rockets exploding as they fly through the air. So now is probably a good spot to insert just a bit of constructive criticism. None of this is being shared with the intention of bashing the film or any of the creatives that were involved in creating the film. I think I've made it perfectly clear that I really liked Venom and am very excited about the sequel. If you look at the film's runtime, remove the end credits and the mid-credits scene, you're left with roughly 90 minutes of content. Based on the things that have come up in different interviews and the general chatter about the behind-the-scenes ongoings of this film, my impression and speculation of the situation is that the original 2 hours of content kept a more consistent, darker take on the material. As I said before, the film's director was keen on keeping the horror feel of Venom, but it seems like the studio was too hesitant to fully run with that. One of the things I notice when watching the film back now, when I can stop and replay certain details if they catch my eye, is this part where Eddie is confronting Venom after Anne uses an MRI machine to separate them. Listen to what Eddie says, but also look very closely at Tom Hardy's mouth.
We're done.
It looks a lot more like he's saying "fuck you," don't you think? This got me thinking about all the other character material Eddie had throughout the film. When you have a person like him who is so filled with empathy for others that now has a parasitic alien inside of him, killing others as he pleases, that is bound to take a huge psychological toll. Not to mention, he's already in an emotionally raw state because of how much he's lost before this. I'm pretty sure you're allowed to have 1 or maybe 2 F-bombs and keep a PG-13 rating, but it seems a lot like the studio just wanted to push away from darker, more serious material, which is a real shame because I think it would have made the story even richer. Tom Hardy more than proved himself excellent, as always. He has such a raw power as an actor, and you could see it with the way he threw himself into a lot of the physicality of the character. There's a lot of CGI used, of course, particularly when Venom fully presents himself, but Eddie's beginning scenes of being possessed and later on at the restaurant are forever iconic. However, Tom said that there were a lot of darker scenes filmed that he loved doing that didn't make it into the theatrical cut, and it would just be really nice to get more of that richer character material in the sequel that would allow the audience to dig deeper into Eddie Brock's headspace. With the recent deal of Disney purchasing Fox, I am highly skeptical about them continuing with the gratuitous, explicit R-rated brand of the first 2 Deadpool films. What this means is there is now a big gap in the market for more adult-oriented content when it comes to superhero films. Venom had its comedic elements, but it's definitely completely different tonally from the Deadpool films, and it should stay that way. The whole point of discussing this aspect of the logistics of the business side of filmmaking is that when it comes to the sequels or even the other films that are coming in the Sony universe, they should all agree on what they want to do first, make it, and stick to it. Hacking at films later on in the process is very rarely a good thing. It just makes a bigger mess than needed. If you make a decent product, you'll also be more likely to get a bigger boost from DVD sales that continue to chart high even years after the theatrical release. The other thing I wish there was more of in Venom was a greater interaction between Eddie and Carlton. It's obvious that Tom and Riz get on and do banter well, but hear me out, I have a solution. Guy Ritchie still needs to make the real rock and rolla, so here's what you do. Cast Riz to be Handsome Bob's boyfriend. Boom! A perfect solution.
Hello, my name's Tom Hardy.
And I'm Riz Ahmed.
I just want to stop and tell you, I've never been more impressed with you than I am right now. I'm really
I'm going to say fuck off.
I just want to shake your hand.
Are you serious?
Yeah, this is really impressive.
Tom Hardy carried a lot of this film on his shoulders with his charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, and it's absolutely fantastic that he's going to get to continue playing the character. Regardless of the studio interference on this first one, it's clear to anyone who pays attention that there's a decent concept and story in here. Anyone trying to dismiss the action in Venom is clearly ill-suited to judge that aspect of the film, since there's so much impressive work and creativity that went into those memorable sequences. There's something particularly charming about the resilience of the film and the larger universe it has launched, which parallels the resilience of Eddie Brock. Every self-important blue check on Twitter you've never heard of because they're not actually famous or relevant tried to take this film down, and yet it became one of the top 10 grossing films of the year, and just like Eddie Brock, it's going to live to fight another day. So that about wraps up my thoughts on Venom. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. I could not give the video script as much of my undivided focus as I would have liked, but I really tried my best. It's just that everything is kicking off right now to do with San Diego Comic-Con and all the preparations. I am constantly checking my email and sending out messages and checking for updates about this or that. If you see me at San Diego Comic-Con, feel free to say hello. I say that as if I have this giant audience when I definitely don't, but you never know. I did have it happen one time last year. It was very surprising. I don't even know if they watch me on YouTube. I think they knew me from Instagram, which is probably even stranger because I am not big on Instagram, so you should follow me on Instagram. Also follow me on Twitter because I will be doing my best to post updates on what I am doing throughout the weekend. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought of Venom, what you are hoping to see in the sequel, Or if you don't have opinions on either one of those things, then just let me know what your favorite Tom Hardy performance is. Tom Hardy is the best Tom. This is not actually a topic that is up for debate. It's merely a fact. So if you have a favorite Tom Hardy role, feel free to share it with me. Or if you have a really good Tom Hardy joke, you can also share that as well. I really like Tom Hardy jokes. There are many to do with the fact that his face is repeatedly covered, and people get very upset about this because they think he's too pretty to have his face covered. Those always make me laugh. But I think the joke that I recall that made me laugh more than any other joke, it was from Twitter. If I remember the general sentiment of the tweet, it was something to the effect of, God gave Tom Hardy a top lip and that's why he's so powerful. So many jokes, so little time. And that's it for now. See you next time. Bye.
Now, maybe we should describe what a chief is by naming people who we think are chiefs. And then people